How to spur people onto success. Pete Barlow was an old friend of mine. He was a dog and a pony actor and spent his life traveling with circuses and vaudeville by souls. I love to watch Pete train new dogs for his act. I noticed that the moment a dog showed the slightest improvement, Pete patted and praised him and gave him meat and made a great to do about it. There's something new. Animal trainers have been using the same technique for centuries. Why, I wonder, don't we use the same common sense when trying to change people that when trying to change dogs? Why don't we use meat instead of a whip? Why don't we use praise instead of condemnation? Let us praise even the slightest improvement that inspired the other person to keep on improving. In his book, I Ain't Much Baby But I'm All I Got, the psychologist lays their comments praise is like sunlight to the warm human spirit. We cannot flower and grow without it, and yet, while most of us are only too ready to apply to others the cold wind of criticism, we are somehow reluctant to give our fellow the warm sunshine of praise. Somehow only too ready to apply to others the cold wind of criticism, we are somehow reluctant to give our fellow the warm sunshine of praise. I can look back at my own life and see where a few words of praise have sharply changed my entire future. Can't you say the same thing about your life? History is replete with striking illustration of the sheer witchery rays. For example, many years ago, a boy often was working in a factory in Naples. He longed to be a singer, but his first teacher discouraged him. "You can't sing," he said. You haven't any voice at all. It sounds like the wind in the shutters." But his mother, a poor peasant woman, put her arms about him and praised him and told him she knew he could sing. She could already see an improvement, and she went barefoot in order to save money to pay for his music lesson. That peasant mother praise and encouragement changed that boy's life. His name was Enrico Caruso, and he became the greatest and most famous opera singer of his age. In the early 19th century, a young man in London aspired to be a writer, but everything seemed to be against him. He had never been able to attend school more than 4 years. His father had been fleeing in jail because he could not pay his debt, and this young man often knew the pangs of hunger. Finally, he got a job pasting levels and bottles of blacking in a rat-infested warehouse, and he slept at night in a dismal attic room with two other boys. Gutter snipes from the slums of London. He had so little confidence in the ability to write that he sneaked out and mailed his first manuscript in the dead of night so nobody would laugh at him. So story after story was reflected. Finally, the great day came when one was accepted. True, he wasn't paid a shilling for it, but one editor had praised him. One editor had given him recognition. He was so thrilled that he wandered aimlessly around the streets with tears rolling down his cheeks. The praise, the recognition that he received through getting one story in print changed his whole life. For if it hadn't been for the encouragement, he might have spent his entire life working in the rat-infested factories. You may have heard of that boy. His name was Charles Dickens. And the boy in London made his living as a clerk in a dry goods store. He had to get up at 5 o'clock, sweep out the store, and sleep for 14 hours a day. It was sheer drudgery, and he despised it. After 2 years, he could stand it no longer, so he got up one morning and, without waiting for breakfast, tramped 15 miles to talk to his mother, who was working as a housekeeper. He was frantic. He was pleaded with her. He wept. He swore he would kill himself if he had to remain in the shop any longer. Then he wrote a long, pathetic letter to his old schoolmaster, declaring that he was heartbroken, that no longer wanted to live. His old schoolmaster gave him little praise and assured him that he really was very intelligent and fitted for finer things, and offered him a job as a teacher. That praise changed the future of that boy and made a lasting impression on the history of English literature. For that boy went on to write innumerable best-selling books and made over $1 million with his pen. You probably heard of him. His name H.G. Wells. Use of praise instead of criticism is the basic concept of B.F. Skinner teaching. This great contemporary psychologist has shown by experiment with animals and with humans that when criticism is minimized and praise emphasized, the good things people do will be reinforced and poorer things will atrophy for lack of attention. John Dringer's law of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, used this in dealing with his children. It seemed that, as in so many families, mother and dad's chief form of communication with the children was yelling at them. And as in so many cases, the children become a little worse rather than better after each session, and so did the parents. There seemed to be no end in sight of this problem. Mr. Ringelhoff determined to use some of the principles he was learning in our course to solve the situation. He reported, we decided to try praise instead of harping on their fault. It wasn't easy when all we could do see were the negative thing they were doing. It was really tough to find things to praise. We managed to find something, and within the first year or two, some of the really upsetting things they were doing quit happening. Some of their other fault began to disappear. Then they began capitalizing on the praise we were giving them. They even began going out of their way to do things right. Neither of us could believe it. Of course, it didn't last forever, but the norm this after things level off was so much better. It was no longer necessary to react the way we used to. The children were doing far more right things than wrong ones. All of this was a result of praising the slightest improvement in the children rather than condemning everything they did wrong. This works on the job too. Keith Roper of Woodland Hills, California applied this principle to a situation in his company. Some material came to him in his print shop which was of exceptionally high quality. The printer who had done his job, this job was a new employee who had been having difficulty adjusting to the job. His supervisor was upset about what he considered a negative attitude and was seriously thinking of terminating his service. When Mr. Roper was informed of the situation, he personally went over to the print shop and had a talk with the young man. He told him how pleased he was with the work he had just received and pointed out it was the best work he had seen produced in that shop for some time. He pointed out exactly why it was superior and how important the young man's contribution was to the company. Do you think this affected the young printer attitude towards the company? Within days there was a complete turnabout. He told several of his co-workers about the conversation and how someone in the company really appreciated good work, and from that day on he was a loyal and dedicated worker. What Mr. Roper did was not just flatter the young printer and say you are good. He specifically pointed out how his work was superior because he had singled out a specific accomplishment. Rather than just making general flattering remarks, the praise became much more meaningful to the person to whom it was given. Everybody likes to be praised, but when praise is specific, it comes across as sincere, not something the other person may be saying just to make one feel good. Remember, we all crave appreciation and recognition and will do almost anything to get it, but nobody wants insincerity, nobody wants flattery. Let me repeat, the principles taught in this book will only work only when they come from the heart. I was not advocating a bag of tricks, I was talking about a new way of life. Talk about changing people. If you and I will inspire the people with whom we come in contact with a realization of the hidden treasure they possess, we can do far more than change people, we can literally transform them. Exaggeration. Then listen to these sage words from William James, one of the most distinguished psychologists and philosophers America has ever produced. Compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake. We are making use of only a small part of our physical and mental resource. Stating the things broadly, the human individual thus lives far within his limit. He possesses power of various sorts which he habitually fails to use. Yes, you who are reading these lines possess power of various sorts which you habitually fail to use, and one of these powers you are probably not using to the fullest extent is your magic ability to praise people and inspire them with a realization of their latent possibilities. Abilities wither under criticism, they blossom under encouragement. To become a more effective leader of people, apply praise the slightest. Abilities wither under criticism, they blossom under encouragement. Be hot in your evolution and lavish in your praise. रेकर्ड भइरह होइन काट्दिनँ कहिले एडिट गरेर चाहिँ यतिकै हालिदिन्छु कि मैले ठ्याक्कै 10 मिनट भयो अहिले चाहिँ। अब कति बाँकी हो? गिभ अ डग अ गुड नेम। वाट डु यु डु when a person who has given a good worker begins to who has been a good worker begins to turn into shoddy work, you can fire him, but that really doesn't solve anything. You can berate the worker, but this usually causes resentment. Henry Henke, a service manager for a large truck dealership in Lowell, Indiana, had a mechanic whose work had become less than satisfactory. Instead of bawling him out or threatening him, Mr. Henze called him into his office and had a heart-to-heart talk with him. Bill, he said, you are a fine mechanic. You have been in this line of work for a good number of years. You have repaired many vehicles to the customer satisfaction. In fact, we have had a number of compliments over the good work you have done. Yes, of late, the time you take to complete each job has been increasing and your work has not been up to your old standard. Because you have been such an outstanding mechanic in the past, I feel sure you will want to know that I am not happy with this situation and perhaps jointly we will find some way to correct the problem. Bill responded that he didn't realize he had been falling down in his duties and assured his boss that the work he was putting was not out of his range of expertise and he will try to improve in the future. Did he do it? You can be sure he did. He once again became a fast and thorough mechanic. But the reputation Mr. Henke had given him to live up to, how could he do anything else but turn out work comparable to that which he had done in the past? The average person, said Samuel Bracken, the president of the Belton Locomotive Works, can be led readily if you have user or respect and if you show that you respect that person for some kind of ability. In short, if you want to improve a person in certain aspect, act as though that particular trait were already one of his or outstanding characteristics. Shakespeare said, assume a virtue if you have it not, and it might be well to assume and state openly that other people have the virtue you want them to develop. Give them a fine reputation to live up to, and they will make prodigious effort rather than sheer disillusioned. Georgette Depnak, in her book Soberness, My Life with Maeterlinck, described the startling transformation of a humble Belgian Cinderella. A servant girl from a neighboring hotel brought by mail she wrote. She was called Mary the dishwasher because she had started her career as a scullery assistant. She was a kind of monster, cross-eyed, bendy like pouring flesh and spirit. One day, while she was holding my plate of macaroni in her red hand, I said to her point blank, Mary, you do not know that a treasure are within you. Accustomed to holding back her emotion, Mary waited a few minutes, not daring to risk the slightest gesture for fear of catastrophe. Then she put the dish on the table, sighed, and said ingenuously, Madam, I would have never have believed it. She did not doubt, she did not have asked a question. She simply went back to the kitchen and repeated that what I had said, and saw the force of faith that no one made fun of her. From that day on, she was even given a certain consideration. For the most curious change of her occurred in the humble Mary herself, believing she was the tabernacle of unseen marvels. She began taking care of her face and body so carefully that her sharp youth seemed to blossom and modestly hide her plainness. 2 months later, she announced her coming marriage with the nephew of the chef. I am going to be a lady, she said, and thanked me. A small phrase had changed her entire life. Georgette Lepnak had given Mary the dishwasher a reputation to live up to, and that reputation had transformed her. Bill Parker, a sales representative for a food company in Daytona Beach, Florida, was very excited about the new line of products his company was introducing and was upset when the manager of a large independent food market turned down the opportunity to carry it in his store. Bill brooded all day over this rejection and decided to return to the store before he went home that evening and try again. Jack, he said, since I left this morning, I realized I hadn't given you the entire picture of a new line, and I would appreciate some of your time to tell you about the point I omitted. I have respected the fact that you are always willing to listen, and we are big enough to change your mind when the facts warrant a change. Will Jack refused to give me another hearing note with the reputation to live up to? One morning, Dr. Martin Fitzhorst, dentist in Dublin, Ireland, was shocked when one of his patients pointed out to him that the metal cup holder which he was using to rinse the mouth was not very clean. True, the patient drank from the paper cup, not the holder, but it certainly was not professional to use tarnished equipment. When the patient left, Dr. Fitzhorst retreated to his private office to write a note to Bridget, the charwoman who came twice a week to clean his office. He wrote, My dear Bridget, I see you so seldom. I thought I'd take the time to thank you for the fine job of cleaning we have been doing. By the way, I thought I mentioned that Since 2 hours twice a week, it is a very limited amount of time. Please feel free to work on extra hour from time to time if you feel you need to do those once in a while. Things like policing the cup holders and the like, I of course will pay you for the extra time. The next day when I walk into my office, Dr. Fiza devoted my desk serving polish to a mirror. Yes, finish has had my chair, which I nearly slid out of. When I went into the treatment room, I found the sinus cleanest chrome plated cup holder I had ever nestled in its receptacle. I had given my char woman a fine representative of two, and because of this small gesture, she outperformed all her past effort. How much additional time did she spend on this? That's right, none at all. There is an old saying, give a dog a bad name and you may as well hang him, but give him a good name and see what happens. When Mrs. Ruth Hopkins, a fourth grade teacher in Brooklyn, New York, looked at her class to rooster the first day of school, her excitement and joy of starting a new term was tinged with anxiety. In her class this year, we will have Tommy T, the school most notorious bad boy. The third grade teacher has constantly complained about Tommy to colleague, the principal, and anyone else who will listen. She was not just mischievous, she caused serious discipline problem in the class, big fights with the boys, street struggles, was praised to the teacher and seemed to get worse as he grew older. His only redeeming feature was his ability to learn the activity and master the schoolwork easily. Mrs. Hopkins decided to face the Tommy problem immediately. When she greeted her new students, she made little comments to each of them. Rose the secretary, she are hearing Alicia, I hear you draw beautifully. When she came to Tommy, she looked him straight in the eyes and said, Tommy, I understand you are a natural leader. I am going to depend on you to help me make this class the best class in the fourth grade this year. She reinforced this over the first few days by complimenting Tommy on everything he did and commenting on how this showed what a good student he was, with the reputation to live up to even a 9-year-old later down. And if you want to excel in the different leadership role of thinking, attitude, or behavior of other youths, give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Make the fault seem easy to correct. A best friend of mine, our 40 years old, became engaged and his fiancée forced him to take some belated dancing lessons. The Lord knows I needed dancing lesson, he confessed as he told me the story, for I danced just as did I when I first started 20 years ago. The first teacher I engaged probably told me the truth, said I was all wrong. I was just happy to forget everything and begin all over again, but that took the heart out of me. I had no incentive to go on, so I quit her. The next teacher may have been lying, but I like it. She said nonchalantly that my dancing was a bit old-fashioned perhaps, but the fundamentals were right, and she assured me I wouldn't have any trouble learning a few next steps. The first teacher had discouraged me by emphasizing my mistake. This new teacher did the opposite. She kept praising the things I did right and minimizing my error. You have a natural sense of rhythm, she assured me. You really are a natural-born dancer. Now my common sense tells me that I always have been and always will be a fourth-rate dancer. Yet deep in my heart, I still like to think that maybe she meant it. To be sure, I was paying her to say it, but why bring that up? At any rate, I know I am a better dancer than I would have been if she hadn't told me I had a natural sense of rhythm. That encouraged me, that gave me hope, that made me want to improve. Tell your child, your spouse, or employee that he or she is stupid or dumb at a certain thing, he has no gift for it and is doing it all wrong, and you have destroyed almost every incentive to try to improve. But use the opposite technique. Be liberal with encouragement. Make the thing seem easy to do. Let the other person know that you have faith in his ability to do it, that he has an undoubtable flair for it, and he will practice until the dawn comes in the window in order to excel. Lowell Thomas, a superb artist in numerous lessons, used this technique. He gave you confidence, inspired you with courage and faith. For example, I spent a weekend with Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, and on Saturday night I was asked to sit in a friendly bridge game before a roaring fire. Bridge? Oh no, not me. I knew nothing about it. The game had always been a black mystery to me. No, impossible. Why Dale? It is no trick at all. Lord Deepak. There is nothing to bridge except memory and judgment. You have written articles on memory. Bridge will be a sins for you. It's right up your alley. And presto, almost before I realized what I was doing, I found myself for the first time at bridge table. All because I was told I had a natural flair for it, and the game was made to seem easy. Speaking of bridge reminds me of Eli Culbertson, whose books on the bridge have been translated into a dozen languages and have sold more than 1 million copies. Yet he told me he never would have made a profession out of the game if a certain young woman hadn't assured him he had a flair for it. When he came to America in 1922, he tried to get a job teaching in philosophy and sociology, but he could not. Then he tried selling coal and he failed at that. Then he tried selling coffee and he failed at that too. He had played some bridge, but it had never occurred to him in those days that somebody he will teach it. He was not only a poor card player, but he was also very stubborn. He asked so many questions and held so many post-mortem examinations that no one wanted to play with him. Then he met a pretty bridge teacher, Josephine Dillon, fell in love and married her. She noticed how carefully he analyzed his cards and persuaded him that he was a potential genius at the card table. It was the encouragement that alone Culbertson told me that caused him to make a profession of bridge. Clarence M. Jones, one of the instructors of our course in Cincinnati, Ohio, told how encouragement and making efforts seem easy to correct completely changed the life of his son. In 1970, my son David, who was then 15 years old, came to live with me in Cincinnati. He had led a rough life. In 1958, his dad was caught open in a car accident, leaving a very bad scar on his forehead. In 1960, his mother and I were divorced and he moved to Dallas, Texas with his mother. Until he was 15, he had spent most of his school years in special class for slow learners in the Dallas school system. Possibly because of the scar, his school administrator had decided he was brain injured and could not function at a normal level. He was 2 years behind his school, so he was only in 7th grade. Yet he didn't know his multiplication table, aided on his finger, and could barely read. There was one positive point. He loved to work on radio and TV set. He wanted to become a TV technician. I encouraged this and pointed out that he needed math to qualify for the training. I decided to help him become proficient in the subject. We obtained 4 sets of flashcards: multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. As we went through the card, we put the correct answer in a discard stack. When David missed one, I gave him the correct answer and then put the card in the repeat stack until there were no cards left. I made a big deal out of each card he got right, particularly if he had missed previously. Each night we will go through the repeat stack until there was no cards left. Each night we timed the exercise with a stopwatch. I promised him that when he could get all the cards correct in 8 minutes with no incorrect answer, we will keep doing it every night. This seemed an impossible goal to David. The first night it took 52 minutes, the second night 48, then 45, 44, 41, then under 40 minutes. We celebrated each reduction. I called in my wife and we will both hug him and we all danced a jig. At the end of the month, he was doing all cards perfectly in less than 8 minutes. When he made a small improvement, he will ask to do it again. He had made the fantastic discovery that learning was easy and fun. Naturally, his grades in algebra took a jump. It is amazing how much easier algebra is when you can multiply it. He astonished himself by bringing home a B in math. That had never happened before. Other changes came with almost unbelievable rapidity. His reading improved rapidly and he began to use his natural talent in drawing. Later in the school year, his science teacher assigned him to develop an exhibit. He chose to develop a highly complex series of models to demonstrate the effect of levers. It required skill not only in drawing and models making but in applied mathematics. The exhibit took first prize in the school science fair and was entered in the city competition and won third prize for the entire city of Cincinnati. That did it. Here was a kid who had flunked 2 grades, who had been told he was brain damaged, who had been called Frankenstein by his, by his classmate, and he could really learn and accomplish things. The result from the last quarter of the 8th grade all the way through high school, he never failed to make the honor roll. In high school, he was elected to the National Honor Society once he found learning was easy to a life change. If you want to help others to improve, remember, use encouragement when the faults seem easy to correct. Helping people glad to do what you want. Back in 1915, America was aghast. For more than a year, the nation of Europe had been slaughtering one another on a scale never before dreamed of in all the bloody annals of mankind. Could peace be brought about? No one knew, but Woodrow Wilson was determined to try. He would send a personal representative